Hi there, everyone, and welcome to Sage Business Group's presentation today. And today we're going to talk about a topic that is really relevant for everyone, regardless of who you are and what you're doing in business, whether it's COVID-19, whether it's a war going on, whether it's a great time. And what we're going to talk about here is cash is king and getting paid, because we're all doing work, but how are we getting paid? That's going to be the next challenge that many of us face in business. And today, Michael's going to be the primary presenter for all of this. He's got a great handle on this. Michael's done a lot of work in our business with the getting paid, and we'll put our hands up and say, we go back many years and say we had some real problems getting paid. We've changed our systems, changed our behaviours, changed our habits. So Michael will lead the session today. But before we get into that, what I want to start with is just a quick disclaimer to get up there, is just so you know that this is general advice. We appreciate that whilst we might run with it, please do get some genuine advice for yourself in what works best for you. So Michael, obviously you've got a great day ahead of us. We'll look forward to it. We'll flick your camera off and we'll get started, will we?
Sounds like a great idea, actually. So thanks, Tim, and thanks everyone for coming on board in these really turbulent times. And we know that they're difficult, and there's great uncertainty and concern for quite a few of us. But just wanted to let you know that we're basically here for you, although we're a little bit remote from the office these days. But we're here for people to have a chat with. So, thought of the day before we get going: when a recession does materialise, many experts agree ready cash is the oxygen that every business requires to survive. So I think it was actually, might have been Richard Branson who said that, but basically, cash is king. And of course, cash flow can be difficult in times like today. So we want to share you some practical things to preserve that cash flow. So today, I just want to go over some mindset that we should be aware of as we're approaching collection of debts and credit processes, things like that. I want to look at your debtors systems while working from home or remotely or wherever you're working from. I want to go over lessons we can take in the future, a bit of support that's available, and your next steps. And then if we've got time, if they're not too specific, as Tim said, everyone's got different issues. I did hear a saying the other day that we're all in this storm together, but we may be in separate boats or different boats. So very apt to say that, not everyone is the same. So let's get into it. And the first area we'll talk about is the required mindsets. And these are three areas. Essentially, you have to be empathetic. You must be able to approach your debtor management with a bit of backbone and heart. And look, and the third thing I want to touch on is that it's okay to sell in these times, so long as you're solving problems. But anyway, let's look at these a little bit more detail. And as we said before, it's about the oxygen mask. And you've heard us talk about it before, that you've got to put the oxygen mask on yourself first as a business. And because if your business falls over, no one wins. But it's not as simple as saying, you know what, I'm putting the oxygen mask on myself. Oh, damn. What happened here? Tim, can you, I've all just crashed out. Are we back on?
I've got you, Michael. Are you there?
Yeah.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. I just had one of those moments here. So anyway, I'm assuming that everyone can still hear me. Maybe if you can...
Maybe in the chat, if we could just put notes in the chat, if everyone can hear Michael, that'd be great. This is live. This is what we enjoy about being live.
Raw and live. So hoping that people can still hear. But anyway.
Look forward to hearing some hints.
Nothing coming through at the moment, Tim?
Nothing coming through, Michael. So I'm hearing you. Anita's got a hand up, so Anita's can hear, obviously. So
thank you.
We're away.
Let's keep going.
Okay.
Linda
can hear us.
Good.
We're great.
So empathetic. So yeah, look, it's about asking your customers how they're going. It's not a matter of throwing the oxygen mask on yourself, as I said, and going, you know what, we need to be paid. If you don't pay us, we can't help you. We've heard some horror stories around that, and that's just not good. You've got to ask your customers how they're coping, how their business is going. Now, some of those customers have probably been with you for a very long time. They've been very loyal, and when we come out the other side, you want them to be around. So, showing empathy is about that, and then giving customers options about how they can pay you. Keep the communication lines open. So that's being empathetic. Next one is about having backbone and heart. So as long as we're being empathetic and giving clients choices, that's dealing with your heart, linking to your purpose statements and considering it all options. But having a backbone in this situation is more about being able to show the client that, tell the client that you're running a business too, and you're equally challenged in these times. So that's what we mean by having a backbone and a heart at the same time. And the third part of your mindset is basically it's okay to sell, especially people in professional services. You've got a business to run. If you're selling, just have a quick look at this spin cycle that came out of a book from some years ago now, but look at it in terms of spin, an acronym. S is for the situation your client is in. Understand the situation your client's in. P is for the problems. Recognize the underlying problems that are currently being experienced by your customer or your client. I obviously is for, so discuss the impacts or implications that, if these problems are not resolved, what impact will that have on them and their family? And then move into next steps or solve the problem. So as long as you're following that philosophy, being empathetic, it's okay to be selling or providing solutions in this type of environment. So moving on there, we've had a look at our mindset, if you like. Now I want to look at debtor systems, and we'll have a quick look at what is your best practice. A quick overview of guides and scripts, and I think Linda is in a position to send you a couple of examples after the event today, and we're going to look at some credit control services. So best practice. Now, essentially, nothing should change. Now, there's a proviso there that your procedures and practices are good already, but if they're poor prior to COVID-19, well, unfortunately, they're still going to be poor now, and more so it's going to be shown out. So, but essentially though, nothing should change if you've got a pretty good procedure and systems in place, but you just should dial up your empathy, as we touched on before. Paperless invoices and statements, with technology the way it is now, you really should be able to produce paperless invoices and statements and speed up the process. Credit control flowcharts, scripts and templates, again, we'll have a quick look at them, but your debtors and your credit control system should be flowcharted with scripts and templates for anyone in your team to look at. We should look at credit checks for new customers, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. And we've said it before, it may pay you to outsource your credit management. Look, I tell you what, it's not something that I like doing. So, but your credit management is not just ringing up and asking for money. It starts from when someone inquires about being a customer of yours through to collecting the money. So that's essentially best practice. Here's a look at the guides and scripts. Now, that's a snippet of what we can provide to you, and we will do for you taking time out of your day to listen to us. Linda will send through a couple of examples of that to you. We've got your email addresses afterwards, but it's really important to have those scripts, and you can see the one on the left, we've already tailored them for the COVID-19 situation to include a little bit more empathy. In actual fact, we really should be empathetic all year round, but certainly in these times, we just, as I said before, have to dial up that empathy a little bit. the systems around and credit control, yes, certainly going paperless, but I said before about having great systems, and systems with credit control are really essential. The key component of a system, we could run another webinar on this, is that you systemize the routine and you humanize the exceptions. So what that I suppose really means is that for most of the time, 80, 90, 95% of the time, you just follow a process and someone that you can outsource to follows that process. But you've got to be able to humanize the exception, and especially in these times where cash is quite tight for a lot of people. So yes, that's basically the scripts and the guides. The credit control services, as I said, outsource where possible. How much you outsource is up to you. We have actually outsourced internally, so to speak. We've got a policy and process in place that we've set, but when it comes to a certain part of the process, and that is just ringing up and asking how people are going, we outsource that internally to a couple of people in our office. The reason we chose to do that is because those people are aware of our core values and the way we operate, and they can, when they're talking to clients, they can show that empathy around our core values, as opposed to having a third or independent party that you would have to train up to embody what you stand for. It should be a good relationship with, if you do go outside of your team environment, make sure it's with a provider that's that aligns with your core values. And as we've got there, not just someone who's basically an ambulance waiting at the bottom of a cliff for the businesses to fall off, and then they try and collect the money later on. You want someone to be proactive and be empathetic towards the clients and customers all the way along. And you can use some. We've got a bit more content that you can use from us, but if you engage a credit manager, then fantastic, you can get some information off them. So implementing credit control services, really important. Part of that too is in Australia, if you wanted to get credit checks, the last time we looked, there was a couple of places that could do credit checks for you. I'm sure there are a couple of others, but these tend to be the most commonly used ones. So what can we take out of this into the future? We're going to just quickly go through your cash conversion cycle, your business 101. Now, anyone who's been on a webinar of ours before, specifically the business continuity plan, will have seen this before. But I want to go over it again for a couple of reasons. One is it doesn't matter how many times you see something, you will always get something else out of it. And there will be some people listening that haven't seen the cash conversion cycle or business 101, or what we now refer to as our 2-minute MBA. So we'll go through those, getting some runs on the board, some bank assistance, the government support and tax considerations that are out there. So first one we'll look at, cash conversion cycle. And you may remember seeing this, but as I said, people have been on board before, but really quickly, day zero, this is say for a manufacturer, or someone who buys in goods. You buy your stock from your supplier at day zero, you maybe pay your supplier at day 45. Day 60, you may get to sell it to your customer. Day 120, they eventually pay you. There's 120 days between when that process first started and when it ended. Of course, you're out of pocket. You've got the 45-day period to pay your supplier. You're out of pocket for 75 days. You're being a bank to your customers there for 75 days. So it is all about not just collecting debts at the end of the process. It's about bringing in that cycle. So to me, I look at that, and some people might go, oh, that's a bit daunting. I look at it as 4 unique opportunities for improvement. There's 4 distinctive areas there that I, as a business owner, can get better at. Do I need to buy my stock way back when? Can I get it just in time before the customer needs it? Can I get some better terms on paying my suppliers? Can I improve my sales techniques or marketing to sell a bit quicker than 60 days? And of course, can I implement some procedures and plans, whether it be pay in advance, half up front, monthly installments, whatever it is, to bring that payment from the customer in a little bit. So squeezing that cash conversion cycle is really important. The next one we want to look at is the cash 101, or your business 101 cycle, or our 2-minute webinar, if you like, our 2-minute MBA. You've seen this before, and if we start in the middle there where it says owners. Owners set up a business and they invest in their business. They invest assets, they invest cash, they invest their IP, they invest in their team. So there's a whole heap of assets that are invested in this business. Those assets are used to generate income, moving around to your right. Profit and loss, sales, expenses. So the assets generate the income and the expenses are incurred, leaves us with profit. That's our return on assets. But as we know, you can't go down the shops and buy your groceries or pay your mortgages with profit. It has to be turned into cash. So that's when collecting the cash. So the cash comes back around from the profit, it goes back to the owners. The owners can either reinvest back in more assets, or they can take cash out to live on or reduce their loan payments. That's business 101. The idea is to get that cycle spinning a hell of a lot quicker, so you're converting your assets into cash and round again. Doesn't get any more complex than that. Sometimes as business owners, we can get overwhelmed. Take a screenshot of that or whatever it is and put it up on your wall, because that is business 101. That's your MBA that you don't have to go to a university to learn about. I'm not saying that's the same thing, but that's what being in business is about, essentially. Okay, what do we got next? 7 causes of poor cash flow. Absolutely, I love that bathtub on the left-hand side, because anyone who's heard me, excuse me, speak before has said that it's great to have, all these new leads and businesses coming into the bath, into the bathtub, and you've got great marketing, etc. But if you've got the plug out, what's the point? It's going to run out as quickly as it comes in. And 7 causes, there's a few more, but the 7 main causes: accounts receivable process. In other words, how quickly you collect your money. Now, do you actually even have a process, or do you ring up when the bank's screaming for money? So that is probably number 1 on the list. Accounts payable, yeah, as I said before, maybe going to your suppliers and getting better terms. Because if you're having to pay your suppliers in 30 days, but giving your customers 60 days, just on the face of it, it doesn't make sense unless you've got a very big bank balance to start with. Inventory and WIP, work in progress for people in professional services, or say builders, etc. You've got some jobs on the go. A lot of the times when someone comes to us and says, "Oh, Michael and Tim, you say we've got profit, but where is it?" We can point to this area. It's either in someone else's bank, or it might be on your floor, tied up in stock, or it could be tied up in jobs you've got going that you have not invoiced for. That's when you need to look at that process and say, I know builders do, they have progress claims. Well, why can't other businesses have progress claims rather than waiting to the end of the session? So just think about that. All these things here, as I say, I've said before, please don't have the mindset that, hey, this won't apply to me. Kick that out of your head for a minute and go, how can I get this to apply to me? You might still come up with the same answer, that's fine, but please, that initial thought of how can I get this to apply to me is really important. Inappropriate debt to capital structure. Again, that just means in non-accountanese language that you've got too much debt compared to your own equity or your own cash in the business. We have promoted over the last, so many years that really each business should have at least 2 months worth of working capital. In other words, what it costs them to run a business each month, 2 months worth, hopefully, preferably 3, in the bank somewhere, just in case. And I tell you what, the businesses that we've seen have done that have been able to weather this COVID-19 storm a lot better than the ones that haven't. Number 5, overheads too high. But we don't mean they go through and just slash and burn everything, because there are some things in your overheads you really do need to keep going to make sure that when we come out the other side, you are still moving, still progressing. You don't want to go and, where possible, hibernate. You want to keep the business ticking over so that you've got a springboard to keep going. But look at what overheads. We've had some clients say, we had subscriptions to magazines and stuff like that we hadn't even looked at. So yeah, go through those sort of things. And if you don't need them, get rid of them. Gross profit margin being too low, certainly we've spoken about before, just by tweaking and trying to get an extra 1 to 2% profit margin. And we've got some tables there that show you that if you could just increase your profit margin by, say, 10%, you can afford to have, depending on the margin you've got now, it could be upwards of 17 to 25% of your customers not come back, and you're still no worse off. So if you'd like to know more about those margin tables, give us a yell. And obviously, poor cash flow, if you're not making the sales, it's going to be hard to get cash flow through the door and into your bathtub, as we see there. Effectively, that's seven reasons. Okay, so that's all great. We've heard about mindset and we've heard about credit controls, but what about getting some runs on the board quickly? I would suggest, if you could, look at your credit process systems and management techniques and see if you could outsource it where possible. As I said, we were particular about, we wanted to be in a little bit of control, but it doesn't mean you can't go and outsource completely. Again, if that's your responsibility within the business, that's great. You're still responsible for it. It doesn't mean that you have to do it. You can get someone else to do it, just reporting back to you. Go and ask for some revised terms of trade from your suppliers, but also from go and ask about revising terms of trade for your customers. See if you can actually bring them in a little bit. Your billing process. With Xero and all these things these days, you can actually make sure you get your invoicing done on time and it's not sitting out either on the floor or in work in progress for too long. And down to the next point, automation. You can have these processes now automated through your software that you don't have to remember as much. It can be done automatically. You can get your programs to automatically send out an email 2 weeks later, just reminding people that their invoice is coming up for payment, is due for payment in a week or so. Just gentle reminders. I know I get that from electricity providers. Car insurance are very good at that. But a month beforehand, I'll get 2 or 3 messages just reminding me they've got a bill coming up. And last, by no means least, have a look at the management controls that you've got in place. Do you set limits around what stock can be ordered? How can you reduce your levels of stock or improve your efficiencies in your operations to squeeze that cash cycle as we went through before? Yeah, but whatever you do, please don't keep working for customers who won't pay or don't pay. You're running a business right now and you need to reduce your risk wherever you can. Sure, be empathetic, but please, if they're not paying you at all, you can't continue helping them out when there are people who would be screaming out for help who will pay you. It just doesn't work. That's what I'd be doing pretty well straight away. Bank assistance, I'm not going to spend too much time in here because I'm hearing mixed reports of how helpful the banks are, but certainly I've heard some great stories and I've heard some not so great stories. But it could actually come back to the not so great stories. Maybe the application that was put in wasn't up to scratch. If you're going to go and ask a bank for assistance, please have your ducks in a row. Have your financials, have your cash flows saying how and showing how you can repay this debt, because they're still going to use their same criteria. Yes, in some instances, the government will cover half the loan, but the banks are going to go, well, we don't want to go without the other half. So they're going to look at things anyway. But please ask them for assistance. There's one there, asset finance funding. And I was thinking that, well, everyone knows about that. You can, just basically get some finance for an asset, but you can actually go a step further. You may, in the last 12 months or so, have paid for an asset out of your working capital because things were going okay back then. So you may have drained your bank account going, I can afford to pay it. I'll go and pay for this big piece of equipment or stock out of cash. You can actually go back to the banks now and ask for some asset finance funding and say, well, this asset, I've paid out of my cash flow, but I'd really like to replace that working capital. And they may actually look at doing that. So that's another option as well. But certainly going through there, I'm not going to go through the whole list of things, but basically go to your bank, ask them for assistance, but please be prepared. As I said, have your ducks in a row before you go into the bank. The good old government. And look, as accountants and tax agents, we've tended to knock the Australian Taxation Office over the past, but I've got to take my hat off to them to say that what they've been able to do in the last 8 to 9 weeks with very little time has been pretty good. Yes, there's loopholes and there's cracks where people are falling through, and that's going to happen, but they've been pretty good. So I'm not going to go over all of them now because we've spent several webinars doing that, but please make sure you have gone through and ticked off everything that you're basically entitled to claim. No one's going to come back and thank you for not claiming it, even though your business went broke. So make sure you get in there and have a look. If you're not quite sure, please give us a call and we'll go through that with you. But for cash flow, make sure you factor in everything that is available from the government, because some of them, especially like the first one, boosting cash flow, that's not just now when you lodge the March Bass. It goes on for another 3, 4, 5 months. Your JobKeeper payments, they go on for 6 months, the end of September. So factor those things in. Your pay-as-you-go installments, you can actually get them to be very down to nil, should the case be. And we've been doing that for a couple of clients. Factor that into your cash flow. You need to know when, say, let's go with September 2020. You need to know at September 2020, how much cash am I going to have in my bank then? So please, you need to look at that. So next steps. Doing nothing is not an option. We've said it before. You've got to have a plan. And you've got to, as we said, put the oxygen mask on yourself first, but show some empathy. But if you're not keeping yourself and your business fit and healthy, how can you help anyone else? Doing the old Albert Einstein quote of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I think it was Albert Einstein. That will go with that. It's just not. It's not going to work. You've got to be doing something now, positioning yourself, getting yourself ready for coming out the other side. You've got to have a plan. More so now than ever. You cannot drive your business with a blindfold on. And that's what you're doing if you don't have a plan. Surround yourself with can-do experts. And that could be anything from your financial affairs, legal affairs. I actually think having like a customer advisory board to help you through to work out what your customers really want from you is a great idea. So surround yourself with people. Not only do you find out information, but business can be a lonely place at times. So to be able to tap into other people's experiences, it's just a must-do thing. Focus on what you can do right now. Now, we've gone through some things to do with cash flow. If you go back and have a look at any of the webinars, and I recommend you do that we've done, there'll be points in there that you can take out and say, I can do that. Again, you've seen the law of results. Decisions multiplied by actions equals results. You can make all the decisions in the world. If you do not take any action, you will get no results. Can't be any simpler than that. So that's basically your next steps. I've probably spoken way too much. My voice is going on me again. So any questions, please contact us on any of the mediums there. You can jump in and have a look at the previous webinars, as I said. Tim, I don't know if there's any questions that have popped up, but if there's not, we can certainly ask them. We can answer those later on.
Just got one here that's come through, Michael. I think actually is a really good question.
Yep.
And it really says, so it says a couple of things, but I'll just paraphrase it shortly. So it's not easy is the short version of that. Consistency, it needs more consistencies. And that'd be a fair summary of applying cash flow, isn't it? You need consistency
Absolutely,
over a long
yeah.
period of time.
Yeah, there's a saying by if you're into reading, by the great Jim Rohn, don't wish things were easy, wish I was better. That we've got to get better at doing that. And Tim, you alluded to some of the procedures we put in place. Well, that didn't happen overnight. That was a process that took some years to fine tune and tweak. And this is what we've got to do now, is use this opportunity to fine tune and tweak some of the processes you have in place. But in answer to the question, absolutely, it's not easy. Is it logical? Yeah. Does it put you out of your comfort zone? Absolutely, in some cases. I don't like getting on the phone, as I say, and doing that. But the big learning I take from all that is the more work you do up front in creating those processes and plans, the less headaches, the less work you have to do at the back end, which is making those phone calls. I think you'd agree that, Tim, you've seen a few examples of that.
Every time. I always think of the examples. Why, you wouldn't build a house without getting multiple quotes and understand what fees you're going to pay. Why wouldn't you have that discussion about money before you even enter the relationship?
Yep.
Makes so much sense.
Yep. Great.
Yep. Cool. So I'll move on to the wrap this up. You obviously will wrap up with a final thought for us.
Final thought. Yeah. Look, Stephen Covey, and again, it's a great book to read. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But when you show deep empathy towards others, their defensive energy goes down and their positive energy replaces it. I mean, it is. If you're showing empathy and you're understanding, people are just going to warm to you. So that, and especially if you've shown, I said, heart and backbone, goes without saying. So yeah, it's a great quote to finish off on, Tim.
Yeah, awesome. So I think Michael did a fantastic job. I can tell you your voice is actually that was just giving an indication of how much talking Michael's done over the last 6 weeks to clients, is the way his voice is actually getting through this. So thank you, Michael, for all the effort you put in for that. I know it's a topic very dear to your heart. It's something that we worked really hard on over the last, and continue to work on over the last 10, 12 years. Great thing is overnight successes are the result of years of hard work. And that's what we're talking about here. So thank you so much, Michael, today. Thank you to everyone else who's been on the line too. A couple of things just to tidy up is Linda will actually send out some feedback forms at the end, later on today. You'll get some questions on this. And you're also going to get copies of those scripts. Thank you for turning up, because we appreciate your time and we want to hope that we give value both in this session, but also in actually the scripts we provide for you. So please take advantage of them, use them, talk to us. We want to talk to our clients more and more, and we can't get enough of it. So thank you so much. Thank you again, Michael, for all your efforts, and we look forward to catch up with you soon.
Okay, thanks, Tim. See you later. Bye, everyone.